Welcome to this video series ahead of Photo Studio Operations New York 2022, taking place at the New York Hilton Midtown Hotel on May the 4th. We'll be talking to some of the speakers from the event ahead of it, asking them two key questions, and one of them slightly more light-hearted in the build-up to the event on May the 4th. Delighted to say I'm joined by Ryan Roberts. He is the Customer Success Director at Pixels, who are a lead sponsor of the event. Ryan, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
We'll get straight into it. What do you think are the key issues facing photo studio operations today?
I think that across the boards, when you're talking about operations or business operations, we're all facing uncertainty, unlike we've experienced in the last 20, 30 years. That's not to say there hasn't been uncertainty during that time period, but we are having we have events that are occurring that are unlike it, COVID specifically. And so when you think about business operations, you tend to think about planning, creating processes. And there's three or four key areas that I see that really relies on some sort of certainty, and that would be your process, your staffing, your locations, and your equipment or technology. And right now, in the last 2 to 3 years, what we've seen is vast uncertainty in all of those areas. And it was almost a cascading effect where in the beginning of this with the, I hate calling them lockdowns, but we'll call it everyone isolating at home, we had staffing uncertainty. We had market uncertainty. Would there be a market to serve anymore? And then once we realized, hey, wait a minute, there's actually some opportunity here in the e-com world, and we started seeing more and more business fast forward their e-com trajectories. We started to realize that there would be a greater need than ever for photography. But then where do we do it? Because if we're still being told to stay at home, then we had to come up with remote studio locations, and all of the logistics that are involved in that. So that's where process had to be redefined. Is all right, we knew how to do this in a centralized locations or a couple of centralized locations, but now how do we do it in a bunch of remote locations? We have our photographers working out of their houses. What does that mean for information security? What does that mean for bandwidth? So there was a lot of challenges that had to be addressed. And then, of course, there would be additional needs in equipment and technology as a result of these new remote studios. And simultaneously, the supply chain gets messed up. So, now I think as we fast forward, 2-3 years to what is post-COVID-ish. I mean, I think we're all hoping we're post-COVID, but it's figuring out what's the new norm. Like what worked during the pandemic days that we can apply moving forward. Did we develop some best practices? But we also have some hangover elements from COVID, such as inflation. And if studios aren't already starting to think about how inflation, the cost of goods and services going up for them, they'll certainly be thinking about it pretty shortly if this continues for much longer. I mean, we're going to have, there's potential for wage inflation, something that, studio ops is very sensitive to. How do you address that? Does that mean increased volumes on an already pretty packed schedule? Does that mean additional automations to figure out, how can we lower human resources cost, but at the same time that raises technological cost? So we've got our fair share of challenges, even being past the beginning of COVID. We're still dealing with some effects of it, and at the end of the day, it's the vast uncertainty that is the root cause.
You obviously mentioned some of the challenges there. You're going to be speaking at our event on May the 4th. What can we expect to hear about? What do you expect from you at the event?
Well, first and foremost, you can expect a lot of excitement. I lived in New York for 13 years. I moved in 2018. I haven't been back since. I don't even know what I'm coming back to after COVID, so I'm super excited. A little nervous to see if all my favorite restaurants are still there. But so a lot of excitement. I love being around people. We just had an event here in LA. It was the first event I had gone to since COVID, and it reminded me how I just thrive off of others' energy. So you can expect a lot of energy. And then as far as my topic is concerned, I'm going to be covering the importance of onboarding. It's been something that throughout my career, I have just really, emphasized no matter where I was. I started out my career in commercial real estate brokerage, and that's where it was just kind of drilled into my head the importance of onboarding not only customers and clients, but also support staff, because everyone has to be in alignment there. And so onboarding, especially from a service provider or a service studio, is about making sure that everyone's in alignment from the customer's needs to the people that are supporting it. So I'll go into obviously much greater detail on the event day, but that's the general topic.
You mentioned there you lived in the Big Apple in New York for quite a while. The event's taking place in the Big Apple. Do you have any recommendations for people? Is there anywhere that you're looking forward to getting back to once again?
Yes. So when people say, well, I'm going to visit New York, or what do we do? My first answer is always walk out the door without a destination, without a plan, and just walk. That's the best way to experience New York. I love being outside, so that's how I would fill my days. I mean, my wife and I would play tourist on the weekends, and we would just walk out, no destination, and as a result, we just stumbled upon parts of New York that we might not have otherwise done, stumbled upon. When I first moved there, this was back before everyone had Google Maps and all of the great apps that we have these days. And back then it was the NFT. I don't know if London had an NFT, but it's a book called NFT, Not for Tourists, and it fits in your back pocket. And you literally, it would tell you all the landmarks and history on them, and it had a fold out map. And that's how I got around. And I would literally sit there and I'd look at the map, and I would just pick a subway stop. I'd get on the subway and I would just surface at that stop. If people are uncomfortable with walking out the door without a destination, some of my favorite destinations are Governor's Island. It's a small little island where we had some military barracks, but during the summer especially, you can take a ferry over there. It's great for picnicking. They have food trucks. They've got slides for kids, playgrounds. It's great. I think the Hudson, if you want to just find a beautiful area to walk along, what I would suggest is walking along the Hudson, which is the west side, and wrapping around the bottom tip of Manhattan, and follow that all the way up FDR on the East River. And you're going to see some of the most beautiful waterfront property that New York has to offer, with just exquisite views. And then I'd say, go grab a drink or grab lunch at the Boathouse in Central Park. It's an iconic place. A lot of fun, a lot of energy there. You have people out rowing their boats. At one point, I may or may not have been in one of those boats and actually flipped over by accident as I was trying to take a picture of my passenger. Like I said, may or may not. And then, the East Village has a special place in my heart. That's where I always found myself gravitating to whenever I lived there. I always lived on the east side, so I'd say go walk the East Village. The West Village is great. It's very historical, and of course we have all the museums and everything. Again, I tend to prefer walking outside, so that's why most of the places I'm telling you are walks.
So the advice is come to the event on the 4th of May, Photo Studio Operations, New York. Take a walk in New York on the other days that you may be visiting the city and explore. Thank you very much, Ryan, for joining me on this video. Great to hear about what you're going to be talking about and about some of the experiences in New York. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you can join us on May the 4th at the New York Hilton Midtown Hotel. Thanks for watching.